Okay, thanks, Fiona. Welcome everybody to the Audit and Assurance Committee, Thursday the 12th of October in Dusky, and obviously we've got a hybrid meeting today, which as we know brings its share of issues, but hopefully it'll all go smoothly. So can I extend a warm welcome to John Gammon, independent member, who is the Vice Chair of the Audit and Assurance Committee, and also to Jane Sadgrove, who's a new independent member on HEIW and a member of the Audit and Assurance Committee. So welcome to you both. As we go through proceedings, Jane and John, I will occasionally ask you, I'm not putting you on the spot, but I will ask if you have anything you want to say, because sometimes it's quite difficult to butt in. If all else fails and you want to say something, wave your arms and somebody will alert us at this end. But sometimes we do miss the hand, don't we? So I also welcome Angie Oliver, Deputy Director of Workforce and Organisational Development. Very warm welcome, Angie. Angie's here for the workforce report from Audit Wales. And also Deborah Evans, who I'm not sure is here. Is she on the screen?
Chair Deborah Evans is having difficulty joining Zoom, but will be with us as soon as possible. Apologies.
Okay, no problem. And your item isn't yet, Janine. So thank you very much. So we'll welcome her when we come to her item, if that's okay. So I think that's all the preliminary welcomes. Have we got any apologies for absence?
None received.
Okay, and declarations of interest?
Okay, none received.
None received. Okay, thank you. So if we go to the draft minutes of the Audit and Assurance Committee that was held on the 13th of July at Dusky, and if we go through those in the first instance for accuracy. So if I go through page by page, page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Well done to Sarah for scribing those minutes. Can I therefore take those as being an accurate reflection of the meeting? Thank you. Can I move on now to the draft minutes of the meeting of the 20th of July? And well done to everybody who managed the 2 meetings in successive weeks. And for accuracy in the first instance, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Can I take those as an accurate reflection of the meeting? Good. Okay, can we move on to the action log? David.
Thanks, Chair. So with regards to the action log, all items are either completed or there's an update there, or they are on today's agenda. However, Chair, I think you may have a point to raise on the response for counter fraud on the thematic engagement exercise. I'm not sure if that here on
the NFI.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, I do. I think, Gareth, I suspect you will refer to this when you come to your report on counter fraud, but the audit committee was looking for a report on all counter fraud and all NFI matches at this particular committee, because they were issued in January. And I can't see that on the agenda. So I just wondered if we could have an update at the appropriate time. I don't know if finance want to comment.
Yeah, I can pick up the missing matches when Candice is broadcast.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And the only other thing I had was, I'm just not sure Audit Wales may want to comment on this. I think the wording of what we've got in there isn't quite right in terms of the timing of the audit. The explanation is slightly muddled, I think, in terms of, I think it all got confused because we were asking about timing. So could you just have a look at that wording to make sure it reflects actually what it should?
Yeah, it is a little bit confused, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we conflated two separate things completely.
Yeah.
I don't think the Public Accounts Committee had anything to do with the discussion that took place here.
Yeah, I think what the committee was after was an idea of the time frame for our national reviews when they were likely to be published. At that point, I did mention that there was an update provided to the Public Accounts Committee. Now, I got it wrong, but I thought that update included timeframes, which, if it was published, then it would be very easy for me to provide to you. Because there aren't timeframes actually included in that, it wouldn't actually solve the problem. So it's not something that we can actually provide. Part of that being is because there's a schedule of reports that go through to Public Accounts Committee. Some of those, depending on political cycles and so on, they will change. So I can't give any sort of, I can identify the work we've got in train, but not specifically the time of our publication of those. But I can look at the wording of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smashing. So can we now come back to the minutes? Are there any matters arising from either 13th or the 20th of July minutes that aren't on the agenda that anybody wants to raise? No? Okay, fine, thank you. Okay, so if we move on now to part 2 of the meeting, matters for consideration, and we'll move on to internal audit.
Yep, I'll take the progress report if I may, which I'll assume has been read. I'll draw just a few small points from it. First one probably is just to pick up table 1, performance indicators. Now, members will recall that last year there was a bit of a delay coming through around getting the amount of responses coming back in time, but you can see that it's been a really good start to this year so far. So I just wanted to draw out the fact that we've got green and getting good engagement and turning things around in good time. So I just wanted to flag that out this morning. And then secondly, table 2, which provides the detail around the individual reviews. You know, I'd say generally we're moving pretty well through the program of work. You know, as the committee knows, there's been 1 or 2 tweaks and changes, but generally we're on schedule, and I would say we're pretty happy with where we are. You can see that there was 1 paper that we were hoping to get on to the agenda today, which is the R35, but that's still in discussion at the moment with management, just trying to work that through. There's a couple of points that we need to talk through. Happy to take questions.
Just one from me, the usual question, I guess, is that there's still quite a lot of work, obviously, to complete. We're halfway through the year. Are you comfortable with where the program is? Because I know we had 1 piece that was delayed.
Yeah, the 1 piece has moved back, but actually that's imminently up and running. Actually, so where we thought was going to go back to post Christmas, I said we talk with. I think we're in a good position to get going on that as well.
Jane.
Thank you. Just noting, Paul, what you've said about the IR35 report. Will we be getting it at the next meeting? Can we be certain of that?
I absolutely hope so, Jane. Yeah, a little way off at the moment. I don't think there are a huge amount of bumps to iron out.
Yeah, because it's an important report, isn't it, given the status that's allocated to it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further comments, perhaps you can move on to the reports.
Yeah, sure. So, procurement service.
I'll take reports. So, good morning, everybody. The first of our two reports today is the procurement audit report. Responsibility for procurement is split between HIW and shared services. For lower value purchases up to 5k, HIW are responsible for raising requisitions and then purchase orders on the Oracle system after posting goods received notes. And then shared services staff are responsible for matching invoices to the purchase orders and processing them for payment. For purchases over 5k, shared service, HIW staff should liaise with and involve shared services, and then 5k to 25k, I think it's three quotations on over 25k, a tender exercise. So our audit focused on the procurement processes that are carried out by HIW staff. The main findings from the work are the action that needs to be taken to reduce the level of retrospective orders. So going through the system, procurement guidance for staff needs clarifying. More training is required for staff, and the reporting of procurement breaches in the procurement compliance report prepared by shared services needs to be made clearer. So in summary, we've raised 5 recommendations, 1 high priority, 3 medium, and 1 low priority, and this has resulted in an overall opinion of reasonable assurance. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Jane, is that an old hand or?
Sorry, yes, it was. I'll find out how to take it down. Done.
Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, Donna.
Obviously, thank you for the report. Just a couple of things in terms of the training. The whole report seemed to indicate there were a number of training needs potentially, and I just wanted to check that those were being actioned and picked up, and visibility and the risk that this presents if we aren't complying with the rules regarding.
Yeah, I mean, just to say, I think I agree with you. The training is really important. I think the other thing to recognise as well is we have reasonably high turnover of staff in the organisation. So again, making sure that people not only have refresher training, but new members of staff coming in, particularly those involved in the sort of requisitioning and procurement process, get the right training and clear about what they need to do and how and who they involve. So.
Yeah, I think you're obviously looking over at my comments because I've got induction in so.
I wish I could see that. Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn. I mean, I have a similar point on her, and I guess then it's sort of reinforced when we get the procurement report later on in the agenda that we often see people being unaware of the rules. So I think there's something there that I think the committee needs to be assured on in terms of training. So perhaps something could come back to say what, you know, what's going to change in some ways. That would be very helpful. The only point I had, Ken, was on 2.8, where it says that the annual procurement compliance report doesn't include summarised information on SQAs, STAs and contract extensions. I thought our annual procurement report did include all those.
I think it lists more, but it doesn't give any sort of summary around or analysis of them by directorate or by department, or that sort of analysis to go, actually, well, this could be where the problem lies, or it's all within where. So that sort of next level of detail, as opposed to this is just a big list more. Not really.
Okay, and that would probably reinforce the questions that we've asked about, do we need to bring anybody to the committee where we get the same departments? Yeah, okay. So maybe that's an action for the future on that recommendation. Okay. I've got Jane and then Janine.
Thank you. I was just wondering whether procurement training and financial regulations training was part of the mandatory training for staff, especially those who are able to order stuff on behalf of the organisation. And if not, should it be?
My understanding, it's not a nationally mandatory training, but as far as this organisation is, we are rolling out the training with procurement to all staff. But it's not mandatory on the list of 12 mandatory training that are the ones that we report to Welsh Government about.
Okay. Should it be? Should it be mandatory within the organisation, given that we're a commissioning body?
Most effectively it is, because we are currently rolling out procurement training to everybody. So, but we can take that back and give it a label if we need to. If that's the right thing to do.
Lovely, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of reinforce that, I would support obviously this being mandatory training, but I believe that in order to get it formally mandated across organisations in Wales, it requires agreement with staff side in terms of how much statutory and mandatory training is mandated, if you like, because you tend to find there are lots of requests for training to be mandated, and clearly we will have a particular view on the importance of procurement and financial training.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. So I know everybody wants their training to be mandated. Janine, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all. Yes, indeed, training is very, very important. I suspect on the question of mandatory, that the difficulty I suspect is the varying degrees of training levels that would be required dependent on the involvement, and therefore from March, April of this year we did a very important piece whereby all directorates have fed into whom they believe should have a light touch training package and those that they believe should have more intense training provided. And as such, since the start of September of this year, we have been conducting it online based, so it's easily accessible by all, training, and there are 3 sessions that all run individual packages within those sessions, and they have been well received to date. We run 3 sessions in September, we have 3 more planned for December and March, and we have HIW members of staff booked in on all of those sessions, and we still have directorates reviewing staff lists and coming forward with names continuously.
Thank you, Janine. That gives quite a lot of assurance, doesn't it, in terms of coverage. I guess we'll ask perhaps Glyn and Angie to just take it back and make sure that we haven't got any pockets that perhaps are slow to the party. But thank you, Janine. That's very, very helpful, and tailored training is obviously so much better if you can do that. Oh yeah, sorry, I'm being reminded by David to remind everybody to put their hand down when they've finished. Okay, smashing. Thank you, Ken. So should we move on to the education pricing?
I'll take that one, Chair. So just to talk through the report fairly quickly, I assume it's been read by everybody. So this is our report on the education contract pricing schedules, and as you can see, it's a substantial assurance report. The objective was to assess the systems and controls the organisation's got in place to manage payments to the universities where there is a variation between the number of places commissioned and then the actual uptake of students on those courses each year. it's quite a complicated process of calculations that need to be performed to adjust those payments. Either to adjust future payments or to raise invoices to recoup money from universities. To take into account where there is lower uptake than what's being commissioned. Our main finding in the report, as you can see, is around the need for some documented procedures. There's a relatively small team who perform this work and know it inside out. But obviously, when there's a small team, there's reliance on those few people. And you know, we did some testing around it. There was only one small error that we picked up, and that was quickly rectified. But I think our just concern was it would be good to have that safety net there of some documented procedures that could be used by others, especially because it's quite a niche thing. But I don't know if anyone else coming in, even from another organisation, will be able to pick it up and perform that work if the two ladies in the team were to be off. So yeah, just thought there should be something in place, which I think as the audit was progressing, they soon realised that would be really useful if they'd had that at the start and could have handed it over to the auditor and not have to explain everything. So yeah, they were in agreement with that. So yeah, overall a positive report.
Any comments or questions?
A small one, Chair, but I note that there was an issue with variation of the pricing schedule for Bangor not being approved by HIW for over 3 months. After the return by the university, was there a specific reason, and have we addressed that so that it's happening?
It's being addressed in minutes about being signed up. I think it was just a bit sort of fell between the gaps, but I think it was done in time for it to come to the committee for approval. So I think it doesn't have a knock-on effect.
I just had a very quick point, I suppose, and it's probably one for Glyn, I guess. The monthly returns, I suppose, if they're accurate, should we be able to adjust financially earlier and get a much more accurate picture? I mean, it's sort of something that I know we've talked about over the last year in terms of getting to an underspend situation. So are those monthly returns accurate, I guess?
So I think at points in time there's probably a greater deal of accuracy around them. And this is where I think, I mean, I'm keen to introduce some of this information into our financial reporting, probably more in terms of forecasting ahead. And I think once we get greater confidence around the accuracy, I'd then be inclined to introduce it into our financial reporting in a way that allows us to then make decisions. I probably don't have that level of confidence all year round at the moment, but I think increasingly if we can bring it into the financial reporting to give the board an indication of uptake and things like that, then it helps and it's less of a surprise as later in the year when we sort of evaluate it.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay, thanks very much, Emma. Okay, so we're asked to note the internal audit progress report. For assurance, note the procurement final internal audit report, reasonable assurance, and note the education pricing schedules final internal audit report, substantial assurance. I should say well done to everybody. Substantial and reasonable is always good to have. So well done to everybody involved in those. Okay, so moving on now to 2.2, Audit Wales structured assessment. Andrew?
I'm wondering if we could just change the order and do the update first. That's
of course.
okay.
Yes, progress report, fine.
So,
yeah, so I'll kick off with the report. So thanks. So today, I'll just give you a quick update on progress. I'll go through financial audit and then I'm just going to take you through the performance audit work. So at our last meeting in July, we approved the annual accounts for 22-23. These were certified by the Auditor General and later laid at the Senate on the 28th of July. as planned. In August, the link is later on in the report that we issued our NHS Finances data tool. I think that would be really useful. Gives all the data for performance and position of all NHS bodies in Wales, so it's a good comparator to take a look at that. In recent weeks, we have met with the finance team. So Rhiannon, Martin and Linda came to our offices and we had a really good post-project learning session, thrashing out some of the things that went well, because we do like some praise, but also areas that we can improve on going forward as well. So we've got all those noted to start on our next audit round beginning in the new year. Just to flag as well that due to the additional work that was required during the audit phase, with some of the amendments and prior period adjustments that were put through the accounts, there was additional time undertaken by our auditors, which has incurred an additional cost, unfortunately. But we've discussed this with officers and we shall shortly be raising an additional invoice for £8,890. That's just a one-off cost for last year for that particular additional audit work that was undercarried. We'll continue to have our quarterly liaison meetings with officers and with the chair and chief exec as well, and kick off our new audit after Christmas. So move on to Andrew.
Okay. Yeah, in terms of the performance audit work is progressing very well. So we're I think where we plan to be, the thing where we issued the plan. We've got the workforce review, which is on the agenda today, and the structure assessment again, which is on the agenda today. The structure assessment deep dive, that was originally going to focus on digital because of the deteriorating position across Wales in terms of the overall finances. We're looking to revise that and focus on efficiencies instead. So we're going to be doing some work, probably starting early in the new calendar year, to focus on NHS efficiencies. I think we wouldn't have been in this situation if health bodies were keeping to plan, and I appreciate HEW is slightly different in that regard. But I think we need to have an overall picture of where everybody is, each body is, in terms of its overall finances and the efficiencies as well, because of the deterioration. And then finally on there, we have the workforce information is focusing on business intelligence. That work is scoping. We've issued the project brief yesterday, waiting to receive comments on it, but we'll look to start field work probably later in October, beginning of November. And then in the very back of the document, we've got a number of national reviews which have been issued. Helen's already mentioned around the NHS Wales Finances data tool. I'm hoping that the links actually work so that you can click on those and actually go to the tool to make it a bit easier for you. And there's some others which are sort of, I suppose, relevant. There's this springing forward work, which is local government work, but because it focuses on workforce, I thought it might be relevant to HEW and maybe of interest. There's a review around achieving net zero across the UK. And we've also published our NHS workforce data briefing. That received, I think, probably mixed coverage. We had really good coverage from Welsh media outlets, not so much from the English side. That was a little bit disappointing. But some really interesting data, I think, there tells a bit of a story around what the overall workforce looks like for Wales.
Any questions on progress?
Comment, Jack. I did click on the link for the NHS Wales workforce data briefing, and it was a really interesting and informative document, and one that I would recommend to others on the board, except for to look at them and an opportunity to.
I guess my question is really around the timing. You mentioned, Helen, that you'll start the audit after Christmas. Are you in the process now of catching up with yourselves in terms of bringing the audit back into sort of ballpark area that used to be?
We're yet to fully get to that position. I'll know a bit more over the next couple of months as we continue with our local government audits. We are behind in our local government audit this year. A number of them are ongoing, some of them are yet to start. So we will provide an update to the next audit.
Right, okay. That could cause difficulties, couldn't it? See, it's on the national press. Okay, so if there's no more questions on the progress report, do you want to move on to the, what do you want to do next? Structured assessment, yeah?
Okay, thank you. So I've got on the agenda today the structured assessment report. So it's an annual cycle of work that we do at all NHS bodies. The structured assessment focuses on governance arrangements, organisational strategy and planning, systems of assurance, and the corporate approach to the management of finances. The report provides an update on previous recommendations, and those are included in Appendix 2, alongside our wider findings this year. I'm going to take the report as read, and just make some observations. As in previous years, we found generally good governance arrangements in place for boards and committees, and a stable and cohesive board, although recognising that there are some changes coming up. Found a comprehensive approach to planning, informed by stakeholder engagement, and there's a good tracking of plan actions. So we've got good arrangements to sort of know how well you're doing in terms of delivery of actions. We think there's a need to have a better understanding of the impact that the organisation is having. So if you're delivering a plan, it's not just about sort of having delivered the action, but really understand, you know, is it achieving the difference we wanted to, the impact the organisation is having. In general, assurance frameworks, so that's sort of risk, performance and quality, are well defined and embedded. But there's new legislation or requirements on the organisation which will require some actions to be taken. And that's in relation to wellbeing of future generations and the Quality and Engagement Act. There's good financial management, but obviously the external environment is changing. We expect that may have some impact on the organisation going forward. There are a number of recommendations in there. I won't go through them in detail, but they're basically grouped into sort of three main areas. So one of those is around the organisation having a better understanding of the impact and the difference it's making. One of the areas is around responding to the new legislation requirements. And the third area really is around sort of just general refinement to governance arrangements. The management response to the recommendations is in the back of the report. It's a good and comprehensive response, so we're happy with it. So that's it in terms of sort of my overview. What I would really like to do is just say thank you as well to David and the team and everybody that's involved in that work.
Thank you. Questions, comments? Bring Jane and John in. John?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the report. It's quite clear from the report that there's a theme within it around impact in a number of areas. You raise the issue about our delivery plan, our internal and external risks and impact, etc. I guess the question I'm asking of you is, how do you perceive that impact should be then over and above what we're already doing?
I think when we reflected on the organisation and the messages we're providing, it's sort of given in the context of where the organisation is in sort of life cycle. So the first 2 or 3 years is around sort of the organisation forming, but of course the pandemic has hit it. So our conclusions are based on the sort of more on the basis of your foundations are now in place. You're putting the plans in place to try to deliver some impact across across NHS Wales. Not only just sort out your own plans, but actually help support others in their workforce planning arrangements and support sort of the commissioning timeline and the, I suppose, the pipeline of staff for wider NHS. There's quite a lot of resource going into HEIW, and there's so there's a sort of, I suppose, a need to go, are we getting value from that resource? Are we having the impact we want? If you're committing to strategic plans, are they actually achieving the difference they're making? So we probably wouldn't have given those messages in year 1 or year 2 because you're building the foundations, but I think you're at a point that as an organisation, which of course you've built the framework, you've got the strategy, you're building your plans. So it's more then around, is that delivering what you wanted to?
Help, John.
Yeah, that is helpful. I guess for me, the challenge that we've got is that a lot of those delivery plans are predicated on being delivered by partner organisations and working with other organisations. So it's about us being clear what we expect of those delivery plans in partnership with people, as opposed to just us as an organisation, particularly the external ones. And I think that I deliberately asked that question because I don't think it's easy to capture what that impact looks like.
It might be difficult to measure, and I think there's probably areas where you would need proxy measures to identify. I suppose the question as a workforce organisation, if in 5 years' time there are greater challenges relating to the workforce across Wales, as an organisation, have you done everything you possibly can to help get there, appreciating that there are other stakeholders in play? Have you influenced the partners enough to ensure what you want to achieve has been achieved? Quite clearly, there are going to be areas which are outside your direct control and gift. There are also potentially decisions that might be made which will affect the ability of the organisation to achieve what it wants to as well, particularly because of financial constraint. But yeah, I think that's an important message, and it's something that the board probably needs to have a good think about.
Thanks, Andrew. And David?
It just wants to keep that, not come across the term proxy measure before, so just give it a smack on that.
Well, a general performance measure is something which you'll say, right, okay, well, we want to understand sickness absence, that's a clear performance measure. A proxy measure will be something which gives you an indication whether you're moving in the right direction. Vacancy levels across NHS Wales might be a proxy. It's not something you're directly in control of, but if vacancy levels are increasing and you can't recruit into those, that might be a proxy for whether your organisation is moving in the right direction or not. It's not something which is directly held to your accounts as an organisation, but it will give you an indication of you moving in the right direction or not.
If the landscape was stable, that would always work, but if it's got a 700 million deficit, so there's going to be vacancy increase regardless of how many we train, I suspect. Anyhow, Jane.
Thank you. I mean, it was an interesting structured assessment to read, and very different from ones that I've read in a delivery body. I think John's asked my question around impact. I think the theme I take out of it is that you're encouraging HEIW at its current stage in development to be more reflective about what it's achieved so far, and to actually start to challenge itself about whether it's getting everything right or whether there are more changes that need to be done. And looking at the internal aspects of that around policies and procedures, reading these papers for the first time as a new independent member, I think that policy review and procedural review need is coming through strongly for me across the whole of the audit committee paper set. And I know that in the management responses that's being picked up, but I think that's a very valuable point, the need for reflection, reassessment and renewal as we go forward. So a comment really rather than the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. That's very helpful. Yes, I guess as an audit committee, I think we want to be assured that the systems have been put in place to make sure we haven't got any outstanding policies in the future. So I guess that's something that you can take forward.
That is something which across the whole of Wales with the pandemic we've seen sort of like housekeeping, I'd say, in that regard.
We do have a report on that coming up next.
Yes.
Shane.
Yes. And a very small point, thank you, appreciate the work on in the paper, it was a good read, I keep saying that. But just wanted to understand from an organisation's perspective, who will take the lead on that we implement the recommendations and act on the findings. Is there a designated lead?
I think we do tell them so the recommendations I've figured back, I think from memory, we do say who's leading on each.
On each particular event,
Yes.
is there are you taking the corporate lead or?
Not across the board. So what will happen is that these recommendations will go into the next iteration of the audit tracker.
Right.
And it's very clear, you see from the report that,
It's just somebody who's holding the ring on it, I think that's mine.
so in terms of the overall audit tracker, that be myself and my team, and then we allocate to the individual directorates, and it's the director themselves responsible for each recommendation.
Yeah, it's specific that key one about the impact. It's just making us think about it when we consider anything coming to the board. But yeah, thank you again.
I think the mechanics of the recommendations would definitely be on the but I think I was looking for the strategic direction on this, and I assume that Alex and the team on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably, it may not be sort of wholly clear in the recommendations, but essentially, I mean, the impact is something that we are looking at as we develop the IMTP for next year.
Right.
So I have the executive lead on the IMTP. So in looking at what our priorities are and how we prioritize next year, we increasingly will need to understand what we think the value or the impact will be of doing those things. And obviously we will bring that to the board as part of agreeing the IMTP. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was that strategic mentioned it rather than.
Just to add to Stephen's comments, you can see that in the approach. There's a greater emphasis in terms of the planning on what will impact look like, what could look like. So it's a part of that process at the beginning, but it is, for the reasons outlined, is on occasion quite a difficult thing to do. But we're certainly focused on that now more than ever.
Thank
Okay, so thank you very much, Andrew, for that. And can I just say well done, I guess, to the organisation and everybody who's contributed, because this is, even though we've got questions and comments, this is a good structured assessment, and I wouldn't want to take away from the fact that, you know, reading these, I haven't been quite as used to getting quite such positive comments always, but this is a very positive report on the organisation, and I think it has moved from forming to so either storming or norming, I'm not quite sure which, but we definitely moved forward and definitely into the meat of everything now. So so to get such a positive report is really good. So thanks to everybody who's been involved in this, and to Alex, I guess, and the senior team. So, okay, if there's no further questions on that, we'll move on to the workforce planning arrangements.
Thank you. So the workforce planning review is part of a wider programme of work. So we have the National Workforce Stage Briefing, which we recently published. We're doing workforce planning reviews across all 12 statutory NHS bodies, and they're ongoing at the moment. Some of them have been published. And we're depending on the overall findings from those, potentially looking at pulling something together at national level with some messages there. So the report in the agenda today is the local review for HEIW. It focuses in two main areas, as sort of part A, part B. The first area is around HEIW's sort of wider national strategic remit to support workforce planning across Wales. And then the second part focuses more on HEIW's own workforce planning arrangements. Just in terms of the timeline, just to give an indication, this one has been a little bit more elongated than we were originally intending. We started our field work in January, a little bit derailed, I think, by the publication of the Welsh Government Workforce Implementation Plan, which means that we had to sort of reset and say, right, okay, given our evidence, how does that factor into our review? We published the report in early June. It's taken a little bit of time to get through, but we have a management response now and the report is finalised. Again, I'll take the report as read. Generally, our findings are positive in relation to the wider national strategic remit. We recognise a proactive approach that's being taken to support other organisations in Wales. We met with the majority of all NHS bodies to take their view on the service they're receiving and their engagement with HEIW, and that was largely very positive. Certainly about the support they receive. We looked at the organisation capacity to support national initiatives, and it looks appropriately managed and sufficient, certainly, to develop workforce plans. And you're very clear that if you require additional resource within those plans, you make that clear before sending that to Welsh Government for approval. And again, similar to the structured assessment, when it comes to monitoring of those plans, I think there probably needs to be a bit more of an impact focus to, you know, what's being achieved, what difference are you making. Section B then is sort of relates to the organisation's own workforce planning arrangements. And I think probably looking at it, we would expect the organisation to maybe have been a bit further ahead in its own development of sort of people and OD strategy, recognising that some other organisations were probably more ahead than HEIW, and I think as a workforce organisation, it probably could have been a bit further ahead than it actually was. That being said, we recognise the impact of the pandemic and also the support you were providing as an organisation, certainly to wider organisations during that time. Again, our view is generally the organisation has capacity to support workforce planning arrangements, roles appropriate, and structure is quite good. In terms of the recommendations, then, the recommendations focus all on sort of part A of the report, the strategic remit. So some of that is around strengthening workforce programme governance arrangements. And that's particularly for the cross-sector elements of the strategy. So the National Workforce Implementation Plan, I think, is very clear, but it's NHS focused rather than what you had as the original strategy, which was health and social care, which was cross-cutting. So we're very clear in terms of part of that programme governance arrangement, but some of that original remit around wider cross-sector improvement isn't so clear. There's recommendations relating to working with Welsh Government to strengthen IMTP guidance in relation to workforce planning, and also potentially a greater role around quality, supporting quality improvement in other bodies' workforce plans as part of their IMTPs. And that was something which we're just picking up as part of our review, is that while the sort of IMTP has been approved, probably the weaker element of other bodies' IMTPs related to workforce. So we recognise that's a gap, and if there's any organisation that's expert enough to be able to provide that support, it's probably HEIW. In relation to recommendation 4 and 5, they're focusing on maximising the value and impact of the education funding, and recommendation 6 is around development of impact measures. So again, I'd like to thank everybody involved. It has taken a little bit longer, but we have got there, so that's really positive. And we've got the management response in the back of the report as well. So again, happy to take any comments or questions.
Thanks, Andrew. Helpful. I'm going to ask Angie if she wants to add anything before we move on to questions.
Thank you. I think the assessment of what the report says. I think just to give some assurance to the committee of the 6 recommendations we accept absolutely brought them for approval, where some of them fall into our business as usual, so you will see that there's already traction on delivering those as well. You mentioned capacity with the end that landed in the workforce strategy, but we're very clear now that as we go into phase 2, which will commence in April, those governance arrangements will be in place for the launch of phase 2. So I think, you know, in terms of the delivering of the 6 actions, we've got a plan. We believe that it's achievable, and get on with it. It's subject to approval of our response, obviously.
Jane, John, any comments or questions?
No, I think it's a helpful report, Chair, assessment. I think I guess for me, there is a need for clarity nationally with regards to this intimates at it, clarity around the role of health boards, the role of Welsh Government and the role of us in workforce planning. And I think we see bits of it in the report where there is suggestions about working closer with different organisations. I think we've got to accept that workforce planning takes place at different levels, and and at these different levels, the functions and the purpose is slightly different. I'm not clear, and it'd be interesting to see what Audit Wales would say in terms of the relationship between us as a commissioning body, primarily looking at workforce and workforce planning, and I'd like to think with the expertise to do that, and then Welsh Government. And what are the expectations in terms of Welsh Government on us when there are similarities in what some of the different organisations are doing. And I think going forward, there needs to be a clear steer. So it's just a comment, I think. Chair.
John, I think that's absolutely on. I don't know. Either of you want to comment?
If we end up doing a national review, I think those are the areas we're going to look at, because we haven't looked in depth at Welsh Government. I think we do need to look at that. The landscape, I think, has probably changed with the introduction of the NHS executive as well, and their role and remit in some of this. So that does make it complex. In terms of sort of the IMTP approval, I'm sort of far clearer on that, which is the IMTPs as part of the planning framework are ministerially approved, and HEIW wouldn't have any remit whatsoever in that process. You know, provide quality assurance before that, but certainly not be involved in approval process, because I think that would complicate matters quite significantly.
Thanks, Andrew. I think your comments are absolutely spot on, John. So, just on the other reviews, you mentioned that they were flowing through, because obviously it'd be nice to see the whole picture and what those are. So how many are left to do, and are they on your website now if we wanted to see them?
Haldar is the one which has gone through committee, so that one has. So until we've actually gone through committee, even if we finalise the report, they won't be in the public domain. Haldar is in the public domain. Public Health Wales is nearly there. For Lindra, unfortunately, cancelled or changed their date for the audit committee, but other than that, that would have been there.
Okay.
Got about 4 which we're issuing the draft report this month, and then we've got 3 or 4 which are in the pipeline.
Right, okay. It's the big health boards, obviously, that would be of particular interest, and none of those are included today yet. Not to diminish the Lindra, but
I think Cardiff and Vale will be the next big health board to go through, which we would expect to issue the draft probably in about 2 weeks.
So I'm sure, Andy, you can use your panels if it wants to see what's going on. I have anything else. So, oh yes, I just have one question, and this may be for another time in another place, Glyn, Angie. I suppose commented on our underspend and the fill rates in terms of our training numbers and all the rest, which is a subject very close to board members' hearts. And it just occurred to me, did you look at whether there was an opportunity for some universities to have taken more to fill that gap? Was that something that you looked at?
We didn't look at it in the review. I mean, one thing that we sort of do appreciate with is that although this is, well, in terms of, I suppose, attracting people into universities in the first place, yes, I think it's the university's responsibility to attract, but they're also competing with one another, which is a very strange thing in the education world. But so if you want to have a national level coordination to try and attract people in, asking individual organisations to do that, you might get pieces of the jigsaw, but I don't think the pieces actually come together that well. which is why I think probably a bit more national coordination might be needed on that side and probably investment, but we didn't look specifically at whether, you know, one university could have provided more.
Yeah, it's very naive, simplistic question. I appreciate that. Might be something going forward. Okay, Jane.
Just picking up on those discussions, I suppose what we haven't looked at here is whether the Welsh offer is competitive, because you talk about universities being competitive within Wales, but universities are actually competitive across the UK. And I know that's probably a political point, but it is very relevant as to whether people from the marches, from Bristol, etc., choose to come into Wales to train, as opposed to going to England. Is that considered anywhere? Because that's very much part of our context.
We considered it as part of our national workforce data briefing. So we looked at migration post education, and recognizing really with the medical front, the loss of that was sort of undergraduate, which I appreciate doesn't sit directly within the remit. There is an awful lot of medical migration from people who graduate originally in Wales and then end up working across the border. That's quite substantial, and it's noticeably more for Wales proportionately than it is for the other nations. Northern Ireland and Scotland particularly hold on to their doctors a lot better. That might change a little bit with arrangements which are happening in North Wales, but that will take some time to come through. In terms of, I think, nursing and some of the other professions, there's better retention in terms of postgraduate. But there's still a porous border, and you sort of expect it that people will train somewhere and end up ultimately working elsewhere. It does sort of happen, and that will flow both ways. The attraction rate in terms of the universities, I think, is probably more in the political space, which we probably can't talk about. But we did look at it in terms of the extent that Wales is holding their own and keeping their own. But we weren't going to form a view of sort of universities and whether they're actually doing all that they can do to attract and retain.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no further questions, thank you, Angie and the team for all the work and Audit Wales and getting the report over the line. I know it's been quite a tortuous process, so well done for getting there, and that we've got recommendations that everybody's content with, so that's really good. So the committee's asked to note the Audit Wales structured assessment, note the Audit Wales progress report, and note the review of workforce planning arrangements. Everybody happy to do so? Thank you. Okay, moving on to 2.3, HEIW policies. Sally, are you taking this? Questions? Okay.
Thank you. I think it's a helpful paper, and it's good to see that the review that Audit Wales suggested is being undertaken actively. I wondered what processes there are in place to identify where we need a policy that doesn't exist currently.
That's a very, very good question. So in terms of the background, if you look at the point of establishment, we worked with the board secretaries and with Welsh Government, board secretaries of other NHS organisations, Welsh Government, to identify areas where policies and procedures were required and implemented on that basis. In terms of areas that require policies, I guess it's very much on an ad hoc basis. I would say there's a normal approach in place to identify gaps. So that's a really good question. So we obviously received circulars from Welsh Government which highlight areas going forward. So, for example, we're currently speaking of safely a process to improve policies, but that's more of responding to direction from Welsh Government rather than looking for gaps. But clearly, at the point of establishment, we did have a view across the board in terms of the policy that we required. We do also have a policy and policies in place. But in terms of the gaps, that's very challenging to fix that.
Again, small point, thank you for the update, very helpful. In terms of these policies, they were the ones that have gone beyond the review date. My question was, have we got some that are about to go beyond the review date? Have we just pushed forward for the next few months in terms of
yes, we have, and we sent out an email 6 months before a review date comes out. That email goes out to the owner of the policy.
So we know we've got a programme we need to review next month.
Well, certainly the aim. So certainly we'll be sending out emails reminding of cost of correspondence. We have got registered all our policies procedures, and we do send out emails once within 6 months to make sure that process connects. One challenge that we have is around national policies that we don't control, and so that is a challenge. That's including town policies. We're sitting out for structures and processes. Remind people that we need to have
So, if that process is in place, I guess the question is, how have we missed them?
So we did have, and this is going back over the last year, we did have resource issues within the corporate governance team going back this time last year. A number of staff down, 2 staff down with the 3 teams, so it was something that we didn't respond as much as we could have. Also, we put in a new automated system that was supposed to be sending out emails automatically, and that system needs to be refined. So it didn't work as well as we had been led to believe. So that was a challenge as well. But we are content to review the system is working well, and we have reviewed the automated system and improved it. So yeah, going forward, and then also we will be reporting back in 6 months' time, so we'll see marked improvements at that point.
Very reassuring. So thank you, David. The committee's asked to look at the contents of the report. Everybody happy with that? Okay, so 2.4, moving on to the procurement compliance report. I can now welcome Deborah Evans, who I think had difficulty joining. Welcome to the committee, Deb, and it's nice to see you. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, so on procurement compliance, obviously, just to remind everybody that take it as read, that the committee have read the papers, and just pull out the pertinent points if you could. So handing over to both of you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the update report that you've all been presented with covers a period of 24th of July to the 12th of October of this year. During that time, we've had 2 SQAs, 2 STAs, tender extension, extension of the contract award, and we've also had 2 non-compliant spend to report via a file note. May I take this opportunity, Chair, to thank the NWSSP Audit and Assurance systematic review that was undertaken. I found this very, very valuable, and as a result you will note that we have changed the appendices ordering, and we are highlighting the most significant non-compliant spend now first as Appendix 1, and also we've redressed what was previously flagged up within that Audit and Assurance report presented earlier in this agenda, whereby procurement had qualified the compliance comment for file notes as non-applicable. We've now changed those to be quite explicit that these are a procurement policy breach. So that has been updated. So you will notice those differences in today's appendices. So if I take us first onto Appendix 1, this notarizes 2 non-compliant spend, File Note 102 and File Note 103. Then Appendix 2 takes you through all of the STAs and SQAs and extensions of contracts that have taken place during this period. And again, I did find the review and the interaction that was undertaken by the auditor, and quite detailed questions that were asked that really did bring to life to me some points that were raised. And one of those being to make sure that the Audit and Assurance Committee are aware of the robust process that is undertaken when we are presented with SQAs and STAs, in the sense that we do rigidly review this detail and ensure that we are assured by the department that this is the only means by which that it is appropriate that we secure a contract with that provider, and that we do publicise these within the open forum and wait 30 days once they are over a set threshold, wait 30 days for any challenge from the market before we make that award to that provider following this mechanism. So I wanted to present that to the Audit and Assurance Committee this morning, so as not to assume that that knowledge is understood by all. Thank you, Chair.
Comments or questions? From me, if I may. Obviously, we've made the points, I think, that and I do like the new arrangement, so thank you, Janine, for that. It's very, very clear. The first 2 obviously play to what we discussed in terms of training. We seem to, at this committee, not a huge amount, but regularly see ones where people were unaware, and quite often in the same department. So I think what we've discussed in terms of the internal audit report, in terms of perhaps getting the information, would help the audit committee, I think, to perhaps hone in on where perhaps we might need a bit more focused training. And I guess my second comment really is that whilst we're still getting quite a lot of these, there seem to be less in this period. Now, whether it's a shorter period or whether it was just because of the summer, I don't know. I'm sort of taking some assurance that perhaps we're starting to get a market being built in some of these areas rather than the alternative routes. So that was just my comments, but very, very helpful and very clearly set out.
And can I give assurances, Chair, that both participants within that file note are actively on the training route to be trained in December, or are reviewing the training sessions that we have upcoming, so they will be in attendance at one of the future sessions. And that is something that is very important to us, to make sure that all that training is appropriately rolled out. So not just the lists that are put forward But on any occasions now where we have and we identify non-compliant spend, procurement will actively push for training to be attended.
That's very good, thank you. So if there's no other comments, we're asked to note the report for assurance. Everybody happy with that? Okay, 2.5 counter fraud progress report, including NFI matches. Gareth.
Sure. I'll take the report as read. It's a fairly short report. The report is provided to give an insight into the progress made by the counter fraud team against the annual plan that is delivered in April each year. And it covers areas of promotion, awareness and educational activity, prevention, fraud risk, the National Fraud Initiative, and any referrals and investigations we undertake. Of note, I would bring up the 2 points really. The point about education. I have some figures with regards to the e-learning undertaken at HIW, which are extremely low. So that's one point to take on board. With regards to promotion, as a result of the previous risk work we've carried out into student nurse bursary fraud, we have in the past month undertaken quite a proactive exercise in delivering awareness sessions around Wales to university students. And whilst in the report at the time of writing, it says we have delivered 5 sessions to those. That's now up to 14, and we've hit approximately 1,000 students within the last month with regard to fraud awareness, specifically around bursary fraud. As a result of that, I think, and the other work we've done, you will see that from the investigations and referrals that we've only had 1 referral in relation to bursary fraud in the last quarter, which is down significantly on last year. The other issue that I would raise is regards to NFI, as you mentioned, Chair, and you'll see from the details I've given there and the figures I've given there that we are nearly complete from a counter fraud perspective with regards to the investigations we undertake. And in response to the action that was raised at the last audit meeting, the full matches have now been included in the progress report, inclusive of the NFI matches that are investigated or looked into by the accounts payable team at Shared Services. Apart from that, I don't have anything else to present, so I'm happy to take questions.
Richard, can I just add to the NFI? I had an update from the Shared Services accounts payable team. Yes, last week, sorry. Yeah, they were asked to review 10% of their matches across Wales, consistently across there. For HIW, they reviewed some of the classes. They reviewed 100% only because it was so small numbers, and overall they reviewed 20% of our matches. They picked up 5 duplicates as part of the process, and steps have already been in place to resolve those. There's a fiscal tech system which catches duplicates before they're paid, and I had to caught those before they went out and the credits on the other 2 that were outstanding. So they've completed what they were asked to do, and I've asked for this those items just so we can get a feel for what happened to those 5, just so we can continue to improve any processes. So they have completed what's asked of them as well.
I think it's like I thought we did them here rather than shared services, but that's why I was slightly confused. Yeah,
they do on an always basis the various shared services teams, so they process on behalf of the correct elements.
So have I got any, Jane?
Thank you for the report. Just one question around the e-learning and the promotion of understanding and awareness of fraud. What's been done within the organisation to encourage people to take this e-learning module?
We regularly publicise. So basically, we looked at it in a number of ways. My key point is that each member of staff should have counter fraud awareness training in some format, whether it be e-learning or a promotional session that we deliver. For example, in the last quarter, we've delivered one specifically to HR staff or workforce staff. We deliver webinar sessions which are publicised within the organisation on the intranet site every month, one a month, which are dip-in sessions that people can dip into. We regularly put bulletins out with the comms team to publicise those. And I've held meetings with sort of workforce staff to try and get e-learning mandated. So essentially, we do a fair bit of work to sort of publicise these things. And we have tried to get the e-learning mandated because that's quite an effective tool, I would suggest, to hitting people with the with for training. But yeah, that's pretty much as we do, Jane.
Yeah. So from the perspective of the leaders within the organisation, is there activity to encourage people to increase their awareness of counter fraud by doing the e-learning or attending other sessions? I suppose it's a question for the execs.
Sorry, put you on the spot. I mean, I take what it's really important. I think what we need to tease out though is if it's available in a lot of different areas and a different delivery mechanisms, then the e-learning compliance is not necessarily the figure we want to use. So I think there's something about going back and just, you know, have our staff had fraud awareness training, and what is the course content of that then, for the sake of argument? Because I wouldn't suggest that somebody who sits in a classroom session then has to do the same thing on e-learning. So I think there's a bit of unpicking to answer that question properly, and I haven't got that answer, because I know if we look at the ESR result, it may well be low, but it could be because everybody's attended it in a different way, or it may just be no. So I think happy to take that back and have a bit of a look at that, because we do recognise the importance of it. We do, like you say, we run workshops on fraud, and it might be that they're actually a better method of delivery anyway. So we'll take that back and have a look if that's okay.
I think Angie's probably covered most of the points. I think also just to say that through our business partner arrangements, we also make people aware of a number of these areas in terms of training. So whether it's counter fraud, procurement, financial management. So there's a number of different mechanisms which you probably don't necessarily see through performance indicators, but it's part of people's roles. That's not to say we're doing everything we should be, and we probably need to regularly sort of come back and reflect on that. There is that wider point about what training and courses do you mandate, you know, and how, what's the relative importance, bearing in mind that if you mandate virtually everything, it almost becomes impractical. So I think it's about understanding the importance, and I think, as Angie said, the delivery sometimes is more important than somebody ticking the box to say they've done an e-learning module.
So I guess the question is, how can the audit committee be assured that there is sufficient and appropriate awareness raising within the organisation, rather than relying on that simply on the e-learning indicator? And I think that's, you've covered that in the discussion.
Okay.
Just to say that we have agreed with Counter Fraud to run workshops throughout the year, so there is a programme of activity. So I think we've got the fundamentals that we need to have a look and account and give better assurance.
I think so. I think the audit committee are looking for better assurance. I think there's two things, aren't there? From Gareth's point of view, is the substitution for e-learning that we've talked about, the workshops, adequate? Are there different levels of training? Procurement talked about who needs what, and so rather than sheep dip, as it were, everybody in the same? Are there levels of fraud training that are available to different people? And then I guess coming back to the audit committee with some sort of, I can't believe that nobody needs an e-learning module, so naught doesn't feel right to me, regardless of what else is wrapped around it. So it seems a little low.
Can I just come back in there just to provide you with a little bit of assurance, I guess. Yeah, we've arranged to do workshops. We try to cover all different areas, like so the e-learning is there for people to undertake. It's an option for them to undertake, so it is available to staff. We do publicise it. We do put out regular bulletins for people to undertake it. We do arrange bespoke sessions for groups that request it and come just request it. We also publicise the fact that we do that with a QR code that people just simply go on and say, like, we want an awareness session for our department. We have mop-up sessions which we publicise, which we undertake every week. Every month, once a month, specifically in relation to general fraud awareness and mandate fraud awareness. And like I said, there's the e-learning. So we cover a whole raft of areas where we provide the services. Like I think the key point, or the lack of assurance, is more in sort of like publicising it, getting it to, I don't know whether it's managers. I don't know the best method of doing that. I'm not sitting within the organisation, but you know the options are there. It's just getting people to do it. That's so. It's not that I don't think we need to provide anything more than we are. I just think we need to get people more on side that actually undertaking it.
I think from the audit committee's point of view, they're looking for assurance that the people who need it have had the training rather than those who want it. So
everybody needs it.
I know, but I think that's the piece of work perhaps that you can all discuss, and Jane's right. You know, the audit committee is looking for some assurance that everybody that needs it has therefore had what they need, without mandating every single bit of training that's that's there. Okay, so can we take that away as an action from this? So thank you. So the committee is asked to note the contents of the report for assurance. So thank you, Gareth. And 2.6, the review of standing financial instructions and scheme of delegation. Is this Marshall Lynn?
I'm happy to, thank you, Chair. This is part of our governance requirements. We're required to keep our standing financial instructions and a regular review just to make sure they meet the needs of the organisation and, more importantly, the legislative arrangements that we need to operate in. We are assisted in that quite significantly now with Welsh Government to produce this model standing financial instructions for us, which we asked to review and adopt. On the 27th of July this year, the Minister for Health and Social Services wrote to the chairs of the health organisations and with an updated set of SFIs, with a short sort of timescale each to review and get back to them, which is what we have here today. You may recall last year we had some issues with the SFIs that had been produced, and that there were a few issues for special health authorities, and we had to make some amendments which government issued a separate schedule for. The main changes in this document are bringing that into the body of the document itself. So there aren't any significant changes. In Appendix 3 to the report, I have put what has been amended. They are mainly the links to external documents, and as I said, bringing this schedule into the body. So we've reviewed the remainder of the SFIs, and we're not proposing any further amendments to the model document that we received. So we are asking the Audit and Assurance Committee to review those amendments and recommend the board that they are approved at the next meeting so they can be adopted by the organisation.
Thanks, Martin. Any comments, questions? No. I thought this was really useful actually, and very, very helpful in terms of tracking and taking us through it. So thanks very much for that, Martin. I know this is some of these SFIs and FTPs are a labour of love, aren't they? So well done to you and the team for plowing your way through them all. So we're asked to review the amendments made to HEIW's standing financial instructions and recommend the revised version of those to the board for approval. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, great, thank you. So 2.7, those annual review of financial control procedures.
Thank you. So the next step then from the SFIs are our financial control procedures, which take the high level requirements into detailed or more detailed operating procedures, if you like. We currently have 13 of these FCPs, and when we were formed, I think we took examples from lots of other health boards and sort of badged our own bit onto it. As time's gone on, we've refined them to what we need. So there aren't really significant changes this year from what we've done previously. As a result, I'm only proposing updates to 6 of the SFIs, and the main changes are, as I said, relatively minor. They generally reflect recommendations from the reports or other reviews or improvements in processes we've identified internally. I guess one document that has been updated significantly is FCP 13, that's the counter fraud, which Gareth helped earlier this year. Just a major update on that one. So the on-track changes to that. I've tried to set out the main sort of amendments that just to make it more relevant. HIW, it was probably an old Cardiff version from the past, which I think is useful now. It's more tailored to what we need. Summary of the changes I put in Appendix 1 to the report, and there are track documents attached to that. There are many pages, so I do apologise, but hopefully we can pick up there. Essentially, my recommendation today, I'm asking to approve the proposed amendments to FCPs 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 and 13. Note that a number have not been reviewed this year, and also to note that FCP 6, which is for purchasing card, will be reviewed in time for the next Audit and Assurance Committee meeting. We're just reviewing some of the processes on how the cards are used internally, so it seems fitting just to wait until that review is complete. So that's the recommendations for that.
Thank you, Martin. Hands up who's read all 103 things. Oh, yeah. Any comments, questions, John, Jane? I mean, I found this particularly helpful again with tracking, Martin, because having been here since the start to see the changes has been really, really helpful, and so it does focus our attention. So thanks again for such a huge piece of work. It comes around quite quickly, doesn't it, each year? So rather than repeat, David, are you okay with this? Because Martin has set out what we're expected to do, or do I need to read it out? If I could read it out. Okay, so the Audit Assurance Committee is asked to approve the proposed amendments to the FCPs outlined in section 3A of this report, FCPs 1, 2, 3, 7, 10 and 13. Note that the FCPs referenced in section 3B have been reviewed with no amendments proposed, FCPs 4, 5, 8, 11 and 14. And note that the FCP referenced in section 3C of this report will be reviewed at a later date, FCP 6. Yes, everybody happy with that? Anybody got a full house? So moving on to 2.8, review of standing orders. This is you, David.
Yes, diolch yn fawr iawn, very much. Bydd aelodau'r bwrdd yn ymwybodol mae'r ffwriad gwreiddiol yn bod ni'n ystyried rheol y sefydlog yn y cyfarfod o'r bwrdd nôl mis Gorffennaf. Fodd bynnag ac yn anffodus derbynwyd copi o'r rheol y sefydlog model oedd wedi cael ei diweddaru gan Llywodraeth Cymru ar diwrnod cyfarfod bwrdd nôl mis Gorffennaf. Gan hynny, penderfynwyd ein bod ni'n gohirio ystyried y rheol y sefydlog. Felly bydd aelodau'n gallu gweld o cynnwys yr adroddiad bod yna 2 prif ffwd o ran y ddiwygiadau i'r rheol y sefydlog. Yn gyntaf, mae yna man newidiadau wedi cael ei wneud i cylch gwaith ein pwyllgorau, ac fe wnaethpwyd y gwaith hynny nôl gorter cyntaf y flwyddyn ariannol yma. A mae'r ail elfen o'r diwygiadau yn codi o'r rheol y sefydlog model newydd. Ac mae'r newidiadau neu diwygiadau hynny yn codi o'n newidiadau i deddfwriaeth cymharol diweddar. Felly, ac mae'r newidiadau hynny wedi cael tracio yn yr atodiad. Felly, da ni'n gofyn bod y pwyllgor yn ystyried ar gyfer sefydlog ac hefyd yn cefnogi bod y bwrdd yn ei cymeradwyo nhw i gyfarfod nesaf nhw yn mis Tachwedd os gwelwch chi dda. Diolch Cadeirydd.
Comments, questions? Seems to be in order. So the Audit and Assurance Committee are asked to review the amendments made to the HIW standing orders and recommend the revised version to the board for approval at its meeting on the 30th of November. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, thank you. 2.9 losses and special payments.
Yeah. So this is the standard losses special payment report that comes to the Audit and Assurance Committee and covers up to the period 31st of August of this year. The two main items on there are payments of salaries, which we discussed previously. I don't believe that those numbers have increased since the last audit committee meeting. There are 5 individuals who we've referred to an external collection agency because we've been unable to recover some of those debts totaling just under £4,000. So I can provide an update on those when they come through. And the other item is the ex gratia payments, which was approved through the Remuneration Terms and Conditions Committee. So I'm just reporting it here because it will be reported in the annual report that goes next year. So that's happy to take any questions, but that's the update.
Lane, John, anything to raise? Oh. I mean, in some ways, I'm reassured that we seem to have less coming through, which suggests hopefully that that systems have been tightened. I guess we just hope that we can recover the ones that have gone. They're notoriously difficult, aren't they, to get? So prevention is always better. I'm happy to ask members to note the report. Thanks, Martin. Thanks for all the effort that's gone into minimising the risk on this one. Have some discussions at the audit committee.
Just mention about this, the new always dashboard has been produced by the shared services level to give us better information in terms of where the errors are appearing on this. So that went live last Monday. So going forward, we'll have a dashboard that we can put in here. So probably not this one, actually, separate report that council give that information just to give assurance that we're identifying where the errors are and dealing with them as well. Because training again is important. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Okay, 2.10 corporate risk register.
Okay, diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, ar hyn o bryd, mae yna 9 risg ar y gofrestr. O'r 9 mae 3 cael eu asesu'n goch, 5 yn anfen oren ac 1 yn wyrdd. O ran y 3 risg sydd wedi cael eu asesu yn goch, mae 1 yn ymwneud gyda seilwyr diogelwch, 1 yn ymwneud gyda y risg bod sefydliadau addysg uwch ddim yn taro i fanynnau comisiynu. Ac mae'r trydydd yn ymwneud â'r risg fod y cynllun addysg a hyfforddiant ar gyfer 2024 ddim yn cael ei gymeryddio gan Llywodraeth Cymru. Mae 1 risg wedi asesu'n wyrdd, sef risg 6. Felly, da ni'n gofyn bod y pwyllgor yn nodi'r cynnydd yn yr adroddiad yn gofrestr ac hefyd yn cymeryddio bod risg 6 yn cael ei ddileu oddi ar y restr.
Comments? Questions? I'm in some ways very reassured that the risk register is still being actively reviewed and looked at. I think there aren't many organisations, I think, that use it as in this way. So I'm still very reassured that we are getting regular updates on it. So I suppose the only question I've got is about completeness. It's a bit along the lines of Jane's question: is there anything that we haven't identified, such as the outside world in terms of the financial landscape and all the rest of it, and the overall impact? I think we've reflected that, but I just want to be reassured that.
Yes, that's certainly something we were thinking about, and that's certainly something that's been captured within the strategic risks that went to the board last time. But we do constantly review our risks, and the corporate risk register is just the one part of the other system that we have in place. We've got the project teams with risk registers and the individual directorates, and then feeding into the system. So we've got the known knowns in place. So I guess it's complex as it can.
Very fluid situation, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, so we're asked to note the contents of the report for assurance and approve the removal of the one green risk 6 from the risk register. Content? Oh, John, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, Chair. The sound has been intermittent. I don't know if it's the same for you, Jane, but we've been missing certain parts in the last sort of 5-10 minutes. So I'm not sure if you did ask us for questions or not. I just want to clarify, if I may, Chair, with regards to risk 18, obviously the status there is the trend is static, but it's red. But it notes, David, that we'll be in a better position with regards to fill rates and recruitment at the beginning of October, it says. Does this suggest that we've had those figures and it remains red, or is this risk still to be updated from those figures?
I know, so if you recall, this was considered at the September board, and we'll bring a paper on the fill rates to the board session at the end of October. So those dates will be available at that point. With regards to the current position of the execs, I think that that information will not be.
We haven't received those yet.
Yes, yeah, we haven't received those yet, and the intention is to take that information to the board.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
So the same thing I've written down, John. Interestingly, it's always at a point in time, isn't it? And I think Lisa gave us an indication that she was getting early signs of the figures, didn't she? But we're all anxious, I guess, to see those and know whether it's red or super red.
At the board, on a like-by-like basis, it looked to be an improved situation, but obviously wanted to see those final figures in September, where you can actually say that is the position.
Yeah.
Okay, and also just to note, Chair, we can't see the room anymore. There's no camera to see you. So there's obviously gremlins coming into the line. Oh, okay. It's back.
We're back in focus. Oh dear. And wave your arms if the sound goes, John and Jane, because sound is very frustrating, and can see Donna's sympathetic face on, having been on the end of one of these previously. Oh yeah. I don't know how far back your sound gremlins went. Is there anything on the last couple of items that you wanted to ask? No, you're okay. Okay, right, sorry about that. Right, moving on then. I think we've noted the contents of the report and approved the removal of the one green risk from the CRR. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, just in case you haven't been able to hear that. Moving on to 211, the audit recommendation tracker.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, hyn o bryd mae yna 13 o argymhellion ar y tracsiwr archwilio, a mae'n braf iawn gallu adrodd nad oes yna un o'r argymhellion ar hyn o bryd yn asesu'n gwch. O ran yr 11 argymhelliad a wnaethpwyd gan yr archwilwyr mewnol, mae 7 yn cael ei asesu'n wyrdd a 4 yn cael ei asesu yn amber neu'n oren. O ran y 2 argymhelliad a wnaethpwyd gan archwilio allanol, neu archwilio Cymru, mae 1 cael ei asesu'n amber ac 1 cael ei asesu'n wyrdd. Felly, dyn ni'n gofyn i'r Pwyllgor sgwelwch ymlaen nodi'r adroddiad, ystyried y cynnydd a weithbwyd dros y cyfnod a fu, a ni'n gofyn eich bod chi'n cymeradwyo bod yr argymhellion sydd wedi cael ei asesu'n wyrdd yn cael ei dynnu oddi ar y traciwr. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Comments, questions, I guess, anything from internal and external audit on this that you want to raise? Given that they're mainly green.
Just to get updated the reports that come through this time.
Yes, it's just so we update on the rest of the standards. There's a fair few.
I'll just say as well, the one on there is about software development, which is in the list report in the last committee. We're actually at the moment doing a follow-up on that piece of work, so that'll come through to the next committee. So I think everyone's marked green soon.
That's helpful. Yes. Let's see that. Okay, so the system seems to be working quite well, and well done to everybody, I think. So I like seeing a tracker that looks looks like this. It's rather unusual. I'm sure as auditors you can see it's quite unusual. But yes, well done to everybody, because we did go through a period where we did have to do reds and some out-of-date ones. So so that's really well done to everybody. You could take that back to the management team. So I'm really pleased to see the tracker as it is.
Well, thank you, John.
So we're asked to note the report, consider the progress and approve the recommendations that have been assessed as completed and given a green rating are withdrawn from the tracker. That should reduce it considerably.
Yes, but we've got
some new ones.
We have got
yeah, just in case
like
you thought you were on
for it.
tracker. Yeah. Excellent. Okay, so moving on to 2.12, review of declarations of interest.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, papur yw'n nodi wybodaeth ydy hon. Mae'r gwrs sefydlog ac yn gofyn bod ni'n ystyried ein cofrestr buddiannau wrth y blwyddyn. Felly mae'r ddogfen gerbron heddiw a felly yn gofyn sgwelwch yna, chi'n nodi gynnwys y droddiad. O ran cefndir, da ni'n gofyn i aelodau'r bwrdd i gwblhau ffurflen, cadarnhau buddiannau hyd a aelodau o'r Deputy Dean's Group ac hefyd unrhyw aelod o staff sy'n gallu dylanwadu neu'n rhanddeiliad ar cyllideb.
Thanks. Questions on this? I think it's come a long way actually. The inception of BPOW and it feels quite comprehensive to me. Tell me you're busy. So I think it's very comprehensive. I mean, I don't know whether internal and external audit have any comments, but yeah. Okay, so the committee is asked to note the report and the appended declarations of interest, register for information. Everybody happy with that? Yeah, moving on 213, review of gifts, hospitality and sponsorship. This shouldn't take you long.
Thank you, David. No, it won't. Papur yw nodi ydy hon yn unol â'r rhywbeth sydd yn dan ystyried cofrestr a ffordd lletygarwch a nawdd yn flynyddol. Bydd aelodau nodi mae dim ond un ar y corffwyd dros y cyfnod a fi sydd yn rhaid ar y tryfu hydref. Felly dwi'n gofyn bod aelodau yn osi ar y droniad ysgolwyr.
Thanks, David. Anything? Any comments, questions? I suppose I only have one comment, which you might expect, which is, are we absolutely sure that it's all that's offered, let alone accepted?
Well, that's a good challenge. I will I'll raise an email to reiterate and to remind staff that this is an obligation. So we'll, I guess it's constantly just that it's on people's radar. So I'll send out email this meeting just to remind them of the obligation taken before.
All right. Particularly where you've got sort of large departments, you might expect some offers even if they're not accepted. How does this compare to other places? Then bigger.
You should record it for example as well. So.
Yeah. Yeah. It's notoriously difficult.
It's a lot more complex in other organisations. They carry different risks. So I think there's an expectation in a lot of organisations that sort of management above a tier will have to put in a sort of register a declaration, whatever. It's more of a risk in areas like states where they've got the ability to influence spend, sometimes with pharmacy prescribing as well. So there's specific areas of business where you'd expect there to be more coming through potentially, which needs to be targeting. So it's a lot more complex for a health board than I think probably is.
It is, but we do have still have pharmacists
Still a risk.
doctors. It may be something to consider, David, when we have asked people for a nil return rather than an expectation that they volunteer it, so they have to say that they haven't had anything. Like something to be considered.
I was thinking, Chair, the previous paper, we were going to automate the declaration of interest.
Yeah. Yeah. Make it very clear what it is.
Yes, I kind of mixed feelings about automation, but when it works really well. So, but yes, no, that's a good point.
Just on that note, we use ESR for declaration, which is quite a useful tool, and they use nil declaration, which is a very useful tool for borders and for the nil declaration. And I've influenced some things, so it's good. The nil thing I would suggest is an absolute massive, you know, if you're ever going to look at something retrospectively to investigate, somebody's put a nil declaration in, yeah, they do have some sort of interest in something, then that's a vital piece of evidence for us. So, and the ESR thing seems to work quite well. You can't compare by something else.
That's really helpful.
Yes, it's just to respond to that. So we have looked at ESR. We did find quite clunky. We think that maybe teams would provide a fully automated system. So I know that Carlton Vale are using ESR, but they're advising us that it requires 2 administrative days per month to pull the information on and put it on the register. We think teams can do that for us, as provided it works automatically. So we are looking at that because it is, you know, you've got the employed about 600. It's a considerable piece of work to ask 600 people to provide another attempt because they don't always sort of do that the way. They'll never respond first time. So it is a big challenge, but we are looking at how we can do that and automate and improve the system. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, 2.14, information governance and information management key issues report.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, David. Felly, papur i'w nodi hon Mae'r adroddiad yn cyhoeddi'r cyfarfod o'r grŵp Llywodraeth Gwybodaeth ar ôl gwybodaeth gan hynny, mynd ar hynny eich sylw at elfennau canlynol cyfarfod. Felly mynegwyd y pryder yn y cyfarfod grŵp o ran cyflymder y gwaith y tasg a gorffen o ran rheoli cyfnodion. Dwi wedi bod cadeirydd y grŵp GAM wedi sgwennu at aelodau'r grŵp tasg a gorffen i mynegwyd pryderon gofyn bod y grŵp yn cyfarfod yn arwach yn y mis. Mi nath ni hefyd nodi o ran hyfforddiant gorfodol bod hynny'n parhau yn 7% yn bod yn gynislydd oedd yn blaenorol. Ac hefyd yn braf gallu cadarnhau bod ni wedi gallu ymateb i bob cais ran y gwybodaeth
questions? There are really two things I wanted to just quickly ask. How do we improve that safety mandatory? Because this is mandatory and it still feels like 77 isn't mandatory. And the second is something that the audit committee and I can see that we've got a lot more focus now in terms of what the actions are from the committee, but just to be assured that there's an action plan behind this so that people have got allocated tasks and times and all of it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So with regards to the first queries, despite them went down slightly, we are focused in terms of management training across the board. There have been, you know, that there's been a considerable improvement compared to where we were, but we'll continue to work in that area to improve the sector, especially in the nature of organisations, education and training. With regards to the system that we have in place behind the group in terms of ensuring that we implement the actions, we have got an action log that's considered every meeting of the group. And within that action, we will take that standard approach where it's clearly very clearly loans the report and the timescales within which we would expect them to implement that action. I think that we are providing. There is a greater emphasis at the meeting. We're emphasising at the beginning that we want to see what the impact is and want to see what actions are raising from the meeting. So we are focused upon that. I think we'll continue to focus on that, particularly with regards to the summary, so that where we can clearly state what the actions and the timescales we'll try to report that going forward.
Okay, that would be really good. In terms of the action on the mandatory training, because this is the second audit committee now where we've seen that sort of level, I think we need a little bit more information on the pockets of inactivity. If necessary, obviously, that somebody needs to come into the committee.
So we remember right, we've got that information to that, so we'll have a look at that, and obviously we'll share that with the relevant parties so that they can focus on giving us going forward.
Right, okay, so the committee are asked to look.
Jane.
Oh, sorry, Jane. Sorry.
Okay, I was just about to shout. Thank you for the additional detail, David. Understand there's an action log. Is there a future work plan, though, to complement that? So there's stuff that you're doing currently, but is there a future work plan to say what the group intends to do?
We have got, regards to the scope of the work undertaken by the group, we have got individual plans in place. We don't have, we have got in terms of reference, and the terms of reference and the agenda reflects that. But the the plans are specific to the areas rather than overall plan for the work of the IGIM. So it's more focused in the individual areas that report to the group rather than an overarching plan for the IGIM. So I hope that's like you're looking for with regards to the work undertaken by the group.
Okay. Do you think it'd be useful to have some sort of roadmap of where you're trying to go with information governance?
I think that obviously with regards to the work of I'm just thinking about the work that we do with this committee and the committees of the board, we have a clear forward work programme in place. So that's something that I think that's a very good idea for us to pick up going forward. So I look at that and we'll look to have a forward work programme for the next financial year. We'll start looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, a really good suggestion. And help the focus as well. Okay, so we are asked to note the content of the report for assurance. You happy with that? Thank you. Okay, we've got no items in part 3 for information. I haven't been notified of any other business. Has anybody got any other business? No? Okay. And so that brings the meeting, the open meeting, to a close. And the date of the next meeting, Thursday, the 9th of February 2024, via Zoom and obviously in person in the conference room. Have you been able to hear all the way through, Jane and John?
Yes, it's been okay. It's just been intermittent towards the end where we've been losing certain words and certain sentences, but it's been fine, Chair.
Yeah, mine's been fine throughout, apart from when we had a change of translator, when it became difficult to hear the translation.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you both. So obviously you'll need to log out. The time is 12:29. Not bad. Good timing. Yeah. So can we have just a 5 minutes comfort break and then regroup on Teams at, yeah, can we start early?
Sure.
Well, we need to make sure that the people who are attending can come early.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes, Robin, make it 10 minutes then. Yeah, 12:40 then, return please. Thank you.
Just read things for
Only Ricky,
Yeah.
So,